This episode of the Christians Who Drink Whiskey and Their Open-Minded Friends podcast is brought to you by Guy and Lady Barrel alcohol-infused cigars. These cigars are absolutely incredible, and they are perfect for any occasion. I particularly enjoy their newest flavor, Mojito. I'm not sure if you heard me correctly. I said Mojito-flavored cigar. I don't think it gets much better than that. Now, cigars are best enjoyed with company, so head on over to alcoholinfusedcigars.com and pick up a 5-cigar box set with any flavor of your choice. These cigars are great for birthdays, weddings. They're a great gift. You can give them for almost any occasion. I particularly love to get a cigar out, go on an evening walk, and pray. But you can use it however you want. Once again, thank you to Guy and Lady Barrel Cigars for sponsoring our show. Go to alcoholinfusedcigars.com and see all they have to offer. Please enjoy responsibly. I'm Kevin Hackenberg. This is Christians Who Drink Whiskey and Their Open-Minded Friends on Funny&Amen. You can abbreviate that F&Amen. And we're going to talk about some deep discussions today. Again, I have Phillipp Scott here with me. And this is part 2. We're filming at the same time. It's the middle of the day. And we just had a nice glass of whiskey.
Daddy's hat.
Day drinking. But we want to talk about, the last podcast, and I was telling you this earlier, during our first podcast, we had a lot of great discussions, getting to know your history, and the squeaky, squeaky, squeaky toy, and, and there was a lot of onomatopoeia happening, and a lot of sounds.
Yes.
Heartbeat. I do the heartbeat again. Is that like in your... I can't... Yeah. You must have to have an Adam's apple for that. I do not. I have an Eve's apple. And we just had a great time. I know you came all the way down from New York to Philadelphia. I haven't started doing these in New York and LA and some of the other places I'm traveling to. And I'm very excited to take the camera on the road and get some of my IQ people, International Producers Group, and New Yorkers and LA people. Well, you came down from New York, and I think that there was something like you texted me last night, like, let's do this, which I'm not sure if you knew that this week, Megan, the kids are away, and I was like, I need to get some podcasts in.
I had no idea.
So it was very serendipitous last night. I'm like, yes, please come down. Let's talk, because there's a lot happening in the world right now. Whenever you're watching this is the first week that a lot of the country is back to yellow or green. Some places are green.
Yeah.
Some places are yellow. New York and Philadelphia are yellow again.
Yeah, yellow.
Finally yellow. And in addition to that, there's riots in the streets. There's protests. There's looting. There's,
it's funny. The protests led to protests. It was people already protesting in different parts of the states.
Yeah.
Some were just cities, one city or major cities, but they didn't want to be quarantined.
That's the
first protest.
My wife, there's lots of protests going on. You're right that's right. Months
ago.
The
first protest was we didn't want to be quarantined.
Yeah.
And it was all over. And Florida was like, whatever.
Don't tell me what to do. I think that let's start on the positive, right? We'll get to the crazy in a little bit, but you and I sat down after we get to know each other. Mm-hmm. You and I sat down with 2 other great comedian friends, Al Smith and Dwayne Brake.
Dwayne!
And I'm forever trying to figure out what kind of content I can wrap around the name of a show called Segregated Sundays. Because if you're not a church-going person, or maybe you've heard this expression, it's out there. The most segregated day in America is Sunday.
Yeah, the Koreans go to their church, the blacks go to their church, the whites go to their church. Sometimes the Roman Catholics go to theirs, and then the other Catholics go to
So we all divide and worship one God.
One God. We're all
Yeah. The Jews go to the synagogue.
Right.
So I guess there's there are very few polytheistic religions in the world left. However,
so yeah, all together.
All the monotheistic people decide to go to where to not diverse places.
Yeah.
So we had a great time hanging out with that, and we shot a couple things, and it never went anywhere because it didn't feel quite right.
Yeah. It wasn't finished. Something we needed to do more.
Yeah.
Time, funding, money, all of these things.
Yeah. Ideas. Well, again, so, what do you think? Let's dive in. There's COVID and race relations.
Well, it's so funny. Like if you look at the history, it's been, I think this is the third or fourth, for sure the third decade around between 1918. I'm sorry, I said 1918. Between the 18th part of a century and the 22nd part of a century, where there's been an epidemic. It's been between that range. At the top of the century, within the first 20 years, there was an epidemic each time. And if I'm correct, this is the third.
Obviously, we're talking about what comes up a lot in the news right now is the 1918 Spanish flu.
The first
here in Philadelphia. Go Spanish flu. Why did they call it the Philadelphia flu? I don't know, but
I don't even know what to say to that.
The Wuhan virus.
So,
we're owning that Wuhan virus.
Right. So there was the one in the 18th.
Yeah.
For sure. I can't remember if there was one in 17th, but it was 17, 18, and then this
20.
COVID-19. Yeah. So that's kind of like what has happened. It's like it's happened every single time, and just like that, they would tell people don't. And it's crazy because back then a lot of people lived together more. And, even though it wasn't bunk beds, people just made one big, large bed and kind of slept together. So it was kind of one of this, you try to space as much as you can. And it was the same thing, quarantine.
Yeah.
So each time. So that's where we are, and it happened to us again, except that we were so advanced, we didn't think it could happen to us. We had so much technology, and we were so much smarter, so much better. We just thought we can avoid it. We're smarter than this. We can beat it. Come on, Mr. Virus, bring it. Yeah. Like you can't even breathe. You can't figure it out.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Well, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of diverse approaches to it. We got one country. I'm actually glad they did this. Sweden did not close down like everybody else did, and I'm not familiar with the numbers on how they handled it or it was handled there, but I'm sure many people watching this will have their own thoughts. What's your opinion? Like, what's your opinion or thoughts about seeing in our lifetimes go through a pandemic?
Well, you have to look at it as congestion. That's the way I look at it. So people say, in Dallas, Texas doesn't have as many crimes as New York, and it's like, well, the reason that's not fair is because the number of people living in Dallas, Texas versus New York City. You can't compare that.
Yeah.
So what happens with stats? Stats says
per person.
Per person.
Yeah.
The stats grow. So okay, you got 1 out of 10 people do this. You multiply that and put it in New York City. There you go. 5 million people registered alone are in Manhattan.
Yeah.
That's registered.
Yeah.
That's not the cousin living in and didn't tell the landlord.
Yeah.
So that's registered. So, and I'm not talking about illegals. I'm just talking about registered. If you're from Pennsylvania, you move there with your cousin.
Registered to vote or registered
registered on the lease, and they know that you're living there.
Yeah.
And not that your name is there.
The census can prove you're there.
The census can prove that you're there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Where do you get your mail?
Yeah.
So
I've got an apartment in Washington Heights, and I've got 2 people living there with me that no one but me knows they're there. I'm sure they don't, for the first year until they decide they want to,
Yeah, but the point is they're there. So in the same sense, it's like nobody knows you're there. So that's 5 million people registered.
Yeah.
So New York apartments.
Yeah.
We can do it. Come on, bring in 3 more people.
Yeah. Lower. Let's get that rent down to 200.
I know. So it's just congestion. So I think New York handled it the right way. Florida is like Texas. It's spread out. And it is, I'm not saying it's flat. Like, I'm not saying it's like Iowa flat. But it's still flat. So since it's so spread out, that they were able to get away with the numbers. And there's more people there. You would think it would have grown because so many senior citizens like to retire there. But at the same time,
we're not talking about Iowa, right?
We're talking about Florida, right?
The retirement communities in Iowa are really profound.
But in Florida, you have so many people retiring there. You would think the numbers would have grown, but also they say heat made a difference. Also, it was like the hotter the place, the less it can also have an effect. So Florida's known to be hot kind of year round. So you can't predict it.
So we went from coronavirus, and then we're all like been inside for like 2 months, 3 months. And then you have a couple different people, Ahmed, I forgot his last name, in South Carolina, who gets shot by some ex-police officers, and Breonna.
Yeah, Breonna. Oh my gosh. Breonna Taylor. Yeah.
And then obviously George Floyd. So these 3 very prominent, nationally publicized deaths of African Americans. And in addition to that, someone said to me, like, well, what's interesting is we're all just sitting inside reading the news every day, and we're looking for something. At this point, we're looking for something else besides coronavirus to follow on the news.
Well, here's the thing: when you have less to do, you pay attention to more. You know what I'm saying? So in this case, we were blessed, and I say we because I'm African American, and the reason you have to say that is because there's this comedian who made this joke. He says, "Oh no, Spanish people consider themselves to be black. They are, but I'm not baseball black. I'm basketball black." So there's a difference, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I'm African American. I'm not Dominican African American.
Yeah, nice.
So in that same sense, it's like, okay, good. This is the first time ever we made history, and I say we Americans, not just blacks, whites, Spanish. Everybody made history. All 50 states protested. All 50 states.
Wow.
Against police brutality that happens in the. I was shocked, and I know this kind of comes comedic. I was shocked about Toronto. I was like, what? Must be negative words or something, right? But I was like, Toronto? Really? Okay. I mean, don't get me wrong. I know racism is kind of like everywhere. Prejudice is kind of hard to escape depending on your willingness to be open-minded. But your upbringing has a big part of it. So I was shocked, and it went worldwide. I mean, the guy from Star Wars, he was protesting it.
Yeah.
So, and he got very emotional. Now I watched the videos. Like, he was saying some really good stuff. You can't allow police brutality to be the norm and just kind of like turn an eye and like, well, at least it's not happening to me. Because eventually it will come to you.
Yeah.
That's everybody knows. It's like it starts somewhere.
So do you think that the fact that we were all isolated, looking for a reason to get out of house, I think looking for that. Also,
for me, it wasn't that looking for it to get out because people were doing it anyway.
Yeah.
It wasn't that because anybody wanted to get out just got out.
Yeah.
That's just what it was. Especially in New York. I mean, I was in Queens, and 3 weeks ago, that's 3 weeks ago, people were like, I'm going to a bar. Yeah. And that's why bars were like, okay, we'll serve it to you outside. What you do out there.
Yeah, the week before all the protesting started, there was a lot of reports of, happy hours on the sidewalk,
Yeah, I actually got a text message from a bar that I like their chicken sandwich. So to celebrate, every once in a while, I'll treat my wife to go there. I got a text message from them and say, hey, just to let you know, happy hour, all drinks are happy hour every day, 24/7. Come anytime. I'm like, geez. They weren't 24/7, but from whatever time they were open, it was like, price for any drink with alcohol, exactly the same price, no matter what. It was like, wow, you guys are trying to make a buck for real,
We're getting back in business,
So
we got a high dollar rent to pay.
It's funny when you can schedule your workers. Like, you work this week, you work this week.
Yeah,
that's when you know you're making money again.
Yeah.
So
you and your wife I saw, ventured out. Would you guys wear masks to the protest?
We wore masks to the protest, but here's the funniest thing. Most of the police officers were not wearing masks. And I did notice, because I took one of the buses to come to PA. Nobody's wearing gloves anymore. I guess I was like, oh, guess I'm the only one.
Yeah.
Right? So I guess everybody knows it comes from the mouth, and so I'm a little bit behind. But so everybody's just wearing masks, And even in the protests, like I wasn't yelling a lot, but just walking for so long, you're like, I need more air. Yeah. My air is coming back to me. I need more. You pull it down. There it is, fresh.
There's the fresh stuff.
So, but
I think that it's interesting. My because we live in cities, and there's this proximity to each other. No matter what you think, I'm curious because I think that like my relatives, many relatives live outside the cities, and there's more space available.
Gotcha.
I walk out to my front porch, and my neighbor walks out my one neighbor walks out. Our doors are right next to each other. Yeah. Our doors are like 2 feet apart.
Right, like condos.
And then our neighbor, their porch, their door is like 15 feet from us. So I'm like 2 feet here and 15 feet there. If I go, I can't even. I have to go to like the wrong side of my porch to where the stairs aren't to get right between to maintain 6 feet on either side.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting in the city. You're so much closer to people, and so I think that there's a tendency to, even if you don't believe in the masks,
right?
Even if you don't care, you're just like, I want my natural immune system to kick in and do its thing,
right.
And I'll take that risk. You're in that proximity to other people, and so that's interesting because I think that like. It was early in the quarantine, and I got this job to go out and do some aerial cinematography, drone work. And my assistant and I we started the day wearing masks, then we kind of like, like, are you okay? We felt like okay. So we were we wanted to wear a mask. But what was fascinating is like, there's this mom and a kid walking out of a park, and this kid says to his mom's like, Mommy, that man got a little close to me. He was closer to me than 6 feet. And I was like, kid, like, springtime's going to come. We're going to be out on the street. Like, even if this is still happening, like, it's fascinating to kind of, like, think about trying to isolate yourself in a city environment. It's hard. It's hard.
I mean,
a guy I knew in Manhattan was an essential worker traveling on the subway every morning. And it's just like, how do you maintain these guidelines in a situation like that?
It's funny because it's almost impossible, especially on the subway. Once they announced that, hey, probably this week we might do a soft reopen. We might. It wasn't a guarantee at first. I mean, the subways was almost the same. It was flooded again.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, we're gonna open it up again. Great, let's go. Here we go.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait. He said might, which is a consideration. And they wanted the numbers, and I'm talking about New York City. They wanted the numbers to make sure that, okay, after the protest, did it spike? When all these people congregating together, protesting, standing in one section for at least 20 minutes, and then walking together for another hour and congregating for another hour and then doing it again, They wanted to make sure, okay, is this going to spike? And it didn't spike. So it was like, okay, this is good news. If I'm correct, according to Friday, that was the first day that there was no deaths in New York City.
Wow.
So that's, that's a real good sign,
Yeah.
So, especially because New York's been protesting, that was the second week.
Yeah.
So, first week I was hesitant to go protest because it was like, I don't want to be part of the death and destruction because that's not me.
Yeah.
That's, I want a peaceful protest. Talk it out. I don't want to damage things and break stuff. I want to talk.
Where's that coming from? Where's the, a lot of people, my family is typically conservative, and it's interesting. I think that like since Donald Trump's been elected, there's been criticism of protesting. because I don't know. I think it's like, do right. Well, we saw it. We saw conservative people during COVID protesting.
Yeah.
Protesting that. Protesting quarantine.
Right. So, once you see the protesting, a unified protest, I'll say it that way. Once you see a unified protest around the states, you kind of forget that people were protesting the COVID-19.
Yeah.
Because there's a national issue that's happening right now, and it is funny, if you listen to the protesters who were protesting the COVID-19, they equated to slavery. I don't know if you heard that.
Yeah.
But there was like, you making us stay in our houses is like being in prison or in slavery, and it was like, wow, that's not even close. Because people don't know, slavery has nothing to do with just working for a man. Slavery had to do with we were not considered humans. So that's the different level. We were not considered slaves to work for a man. We were considered slaves because we were considered cattle. We were sold and shipped and moved around like cattle.
Yeah.
So there
was a forced to do something layer, which is common, but the reasoning.
Right.
One reasoning was for your and everyone else's safety. The other reasoning is because these people are less.
Right.
These people are property. These people are
property. That's the correct term, because the Constitution wasn't written for us. And when they said every man, so in order to make sure that people didn't think that we were African Americans were men, they said, okay, so we classed them as not man.
Yeah.
You guys are equivalent to cattle. And so, and here's the promotion. This is the funniest thing.
Talking cattle.
Talking cattle, right.
Procreating cattle.
Procreating cattle that you can teach.
You can't F with the cattle.
Right.
But
So we were equivalent to what they do the experiments with the sign language, as far as like monkeys, apes, gorillas, orangutans. So we were considered in that level over here in the States. So
it's interesting when you think about that, and the cattle, you gotta, no, I'm gonna say some things that are like, there's jokes and like out there about
sensitive, yeah,
about doing some things to like sheep. But if truly, it's very interesting to kind of like take those thoughts and like run with them and be like, yeah, that was kind of wrong. Like not kind of wrong, it was seriously wrong. But to take that mindset of like, if you're calling this people group less than or cattle equal to property, equal to livestock, and then you're going out and like sleeping with them, like
right. The big bestiality, right?
Just go get off on a cow, on a sheep or a horse.
Right. That's a very valid point. Yeah. So I mean, and that's how they knew, but by law, this is what it was. Yeah. So and here's the promotion. The promotion was, and what I'm about to say is also very sensitive. Watch out. So
watch out.
We got promoted to being like women. Now remember, we're talking about the 1800s. So we go from being cattle to being like women, which means we can't vote, which means we shouldn't be heard. We should only be seen, and we're only good for anything. And that's why you see, even in movies like in the 40s and 50s, even the poor still have maids and stuff like that, because we still shouldn't be. We're more like, the whole culture is like women, and I say that to say that's why, I don't know if you know this, Frederick Douglass marched in the women's rights movement. You know what I'm saying? So he was like, no, I know better. And even though I'm licensed, like he actually had a license, like not a police badge, but a license to say like, I'm free, I can stand in front of the line. He was one of the 0.001%.
Yeah.
of people that they were like, we allow you to be free.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And the only reason,
was he allowed to vote?
I don't think so.
Interesting.
I don't think so. I think that was still kind of but I have to look into that.
Yeah, that's an interesting question to think about. Was he allowed? was a black man or woman in that time, a free man,
a free person, yeah.
were they allowed to allowed to vote?
But I think that's the promotion back then, was because he did his during slavery times.
Yeah.
So I think the promotion for him was still a little bit segregation of, oh, you're like a woman, so we acknowledge you, but we're not going to take advice from you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So it was that mindset. So so that's what segregated times is the promotion from being cattle to being like women in the sense of the American mindset, not like women of today who can kick ass over a film, but
those kickboxing women, watch out, you know.
Right, but the women of those days who was like, we're not going to allow you into sports, we're not going to allow you a voice in politics, we're not going to allow you a voice to vote, we're not going to allow you to do anything. And it honestly was World War II that shifted that, when all the men were out to war.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, we got to have somebody to run these factories, and it was like if we can do this, we can vote.
Yeah.
You know.
I get a lot of messages from my family, my brother mostly. I'll throw my whole family down this train. About, just different African Americans that might be more conservative or more politically or more, in their brain, America has made more progress than the people who are out there protesting
or looting, or
well, let's not talk about the looting.
Okay,
instance,
all right.
Or the rioting,
just the protesting.
Just to say, some people, don't, some African Americans, and I've watched a few of them who have said, hey, we're taking George Floyd, who was not the ideal African American citizen,
right,
and we're promoting him, or we're saying, like, I guess I'm trying to say, like, what's your opinion about some of the African Americans they're a little more conservative? They're kind of looking at these protests and saying, like, these things are holding us back, and
no,
or holding on to
right.
maybe the idea of reparations, or the idea of of different or difference,
I forget the gentleman's name right now, but he hosts the Daily Show.
Mm-hmm.
So
Trevor Noah
said, okay, so how do we be heard? How? Because if we protest, you're upset. If we riot, which makes sense, I don't agree with the riot, you don't protest. If we loot, I don't agree with the looting either. Rioting and looting is not me. We're not heard. Okay? When you're in...
Not just not heard, you're upset with us for...
Well, the point of being heard, because if they're saying don't protest, then that means we're not being heard. Mm-hmm. So how would you have us to express ourselves? Well, you write a letter. You know better than that.
To who?
Right, to who? Who's like, okay, we got another one. Okay, we got another one.
My friend's mostly white church. The protests are happening here in Philadelphia, and they're like, we have to write a letter. And like there's like, 30 guys, one black guy who's like,
right.
To who? A letter? You're going to respond with a letter? You're going to respond to police with a letter? And he jumped off the phone call, was like, I can't be in this meeting. And my other friend was like, who are we writing a letter to? Like, this is a time for action, not words.
Right. It's okay. Look at it this way. There are people who consider COVID quarantine equal to slavery. You're cattle? No, they're just telling you to protect your lives. So they're saying stay in for a while. So it's like they were being heard. Nobody said that. Nobody said, like, shouldn't be protesting. What's the matter with them? They was like, these people, they don't understand that the government don't understand it to try to protect them. Maybe let's just say they were wrong. Let's say the government was wrong. But nobody's saying the protesters are hateful and despiteful because they don't want to stay inside. No, don't get me wrong. It didn't turn to looting like some of these things happen. That's out of anger and abuse. I'll use that word. It's out of anger and abuse. I'll use both. But we protest a cause that's visually seen for 9 minutes of a guy with his hand in his pocket pressing his knee on the neck of another. I love what the coach of the Spurs said. It's like, we actually witnessed something equivalent to a lynching. He was like, his words, the coach of the Spurs, I never thought I would see live lynching in my day. That's equivalent. His hands was in his pocket. He's okay with this.
The hands in the pocket thing is, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's
wasn't a struggle. It was like
it was a struggle. It was no, and his knee is uncomfortable, so he adjusts his knee. It's like, come on. So it's like, to protest that, like, why not protest it? Now, again, this has nothing to do with rioting and looting. This is just protesting. So we're making our voice heard, equivalent to the people who, during COVID, were going like, we don't want to be stuck inside. We think whatever their reasoning was, I don't know what their reasoning was, to be honest with you. When the government said stay inside, I was one of the essential workers.
Yeah.
So I wasn't in medicine, but I was working in warehousing. So
beer distributor, essential worker, beer distribution.
People
Perfect.
gotta have a drink. You know what I'm saying? So one thing that is free from depression or anything is alcohol.
The booze must flow, people. The booze must flow.
So, I was considered an essential worker, and I got questioned by police officers. I was never afraid when they approached me, like, hey, well, why you're out on the street? I was never afraid. And I said something on one of the early episodes, which is identity. You have to know your identity. And when you know your identity, And don't get me wrong, your identity doesn't project off to other people, can be intimidating. Confidence can look like arrogance to somebody who's insecure. They're like, that guy's arrogant. No, you're insecure, and he's confident. Most of the time, arrogant people are lying. Most of the time. They're exaggerating something that maybe did happen, but they're overbuilding it. They're making it bigger than what it really is. So the thing is like, I was confident to know that, no, he asked me a question and I'll answer it. I'm on my way to this job. Do you need any evidence? Do you want me to call my boss?
Yeah.
And they were like, no, you cool. We just making sure.
Were they pretty strict in New York about like asking people, or why'd they ask you?
Because I was in a public place like the subway. Another place was the New Jersey bus Port Authority, and they just want to make sure people are not just hanging out, because we're, at this point in time there was like touch and the air. Both are a big menace, so they didn't want everybody touching everything. So, and they taped off, Port Authority was good at taping off seats to say, like, these seats are available 6 feet apart and everything like that. So the cops come up there, hey, do you have a ticket? I was like, yeah, I have a ticket. I'll show them my ticket. And I can honestly say they were friendly. They wasn't hostile.
Yeah.
They were authoritative.
Have you experienced, as a black man, hostile police officers?
I have not. My brother has. My brother was driving from a show. He, like you, he does more live gigs. And he was coming from a show, and they pulled him over for no apparent reason. He has a white passenger. My brother is driving this B-class truck. They pulled him over, and he says, hey, can you step out? And that's actually pretty normal with B-class and A-class trucks, your 18-wheelers. That's kind of normal. It's not normal for them to go, okay, let me see your license. They normally step out because they want to be eye to eye. So it wasn't abnormal for him to be called out of a B-class truck, which, for those who don't know B-class trucks, they're like U-Haul trucks. Yeah. But they have air brakes. They don't have regular brakes. So you have to have a license to drive them. He does. Yeah. So at this time, they asked him to step out, no problem. And then they say, where you going? He explained the gig. He just finished, and he's on his way back home. And they put him in handcuffs and put him in the back of a squad for no apparent reason. His passenger, they just say, hey, what are you doing? And they explained it, and they just left him alone. Never asked for his ID or anything like that. So then they went to the white passenger, said, do you have somebody that can drive this? Can you drive this? He's like, no. Do you have anybody you can call to drive this? And he was like, no. And that's the only reason he was released.
What was he? What was he going to hold him for?
Nothing. the color of her skin. That was it. And when he got back into the truck, because there was nobody to drive the white kid home, that's the only reason he was released. He was saved literally by.
Was he speeding or something or nothing?
He wasn't speeding. He didn't even get a ticket.
Yeah.
He didn't even get it. He got no ticket. He got pulled over, handcuffed, put in the back of a squad car only because. And he said, and he it's sad you have to have these conversations. Yeah. So we had to have these conversations. And so your parents tell you, like, hey, ask once, ask twice if you feel like they're friendly enough. If you feel like they're friendly enough and they're being cooperative, don't ask a third time. You have to have these questions. Like, this has been taught to us. This is sad, but it's real. So he asked once. He told me. He said, I asked once, and he didn't answer me. And I knew he heard me, so I knew not to ask twice. So he's sitting in the back of a squad. And here's the funniest thing. If you look at me, I look exactly like my brother. We look like twins. We've been confused. Some people have waved at him, and he just looked at them like, who are you?
Yeah.
I've had the same thing happen to me. Like, hey, how's it going? But I'm a little bit more outgoing than my brother. I'm like, hey, bro, how's it going? What's up with you? And he's like, hey, man, it's been a long time. I'm like, I don't know you, but come on, hug me. So it's like, oh, you're not Tim. I'm like, no, I'm Philip. I was like, oh, I thought you was Tim. I was like, nah. Yeah. So I don't know you. Sorry. Have a great life.
Yeah.
But, you know, we look exactly alike. So I know this is no different. Like, this could have been me. And if that kid said, yes, I have somebody who can drive me home, my brother would have been in prison. For what? For what? They never told him. He didn't get a ticket. He didn't say, slow down, be careful, your tail light's out, your inspection's wrong, nothing. He just, all right, there's nobody to drive this white kid home. So when he got back in the car, the white kid had tears in his eyes. When my brother got out of the squad car, they uncuffed him and let him go. When my brother got into the driver's seat, the white kid had tears in his eyes. I was like, dude, I don't have any words to say. I was like, I heard the stories, but I didn't know how real it was. And that was an awakening for him. So
is it Texas?
This is in Texas. Well, you know what? It could have been Louisiana.
Yeah.
Because I know it was out of state and he was coming back. So I don't know what part of Louisiana or Texas he was in. But this is the thing.
Yeah.
It's real. And what makes it sad is to actually have the conversation. You have to tell your kids.
This episode of the Christians Who Drink Whiskey and Their Open-Minded Friends podcast is brought to you by Dad's Hat Pennsylvania Rye Whiskey. Dad's Hat is real rye whiskey made the right way. This month's featured bottle is Classic Rye. Barrel aged for at least 6 months in charred new oak quarter cask allows the genuine rye flavor to evolve quickly. As a result, this small batch whiskey is ensured of reaching the right balance of complexity and smoothness. The final product is a very smooth spirit that delivers upfront spice that rye is known for while finishing with a full, round mouthfeel. To find a distributor of this award-winning whiskey, head on over to dadshatrye.com, or if you're a Pennsylvania resident, you can have any of their delicious rye whiskeys delivered right to your door. Trust the distillery with over 200 years of American distilling tradition, Dad's Hat Rye. Please enjoy responsibly. So, did your parents tell you about cops? What?
It wasn't a just to give an example. It wasn't a sit down meeting. It's sometimes you have to let things come up.
What was more awkward, the conversation about cops or sex?
Cops.
Yeah.
Cops. Sex wasn't awkward because I already learned about it through school, but he was letting me know the emotional side of it, not just the medical side of it, and let me know, like, hey, be careful, and these are things to watch out for. So that wasn't as awkward. Yeah. But to hear that another human, because I grew up in, my father, like I said, was a pastor in a different episode. My father was a pastor, so when different members that don't look like you, white, Spanish, come in, they were loved. There was no different. You know, I didn't have a distinction of love.
Was it a pretty diverse church or mostly African American?
It was mostly African American, but the neighborhood that I grew up in was pretty diverse because we had a Spanish. Well, let me be specific. We had the Ortuños next to us and the Hernandezes behind us. All right. And so then
So
around
I'm sorry, were they white or black?
They were Mexican. Right. So they were Mexican, and around the block
It sounded like Asian. Maybe Asian? Or...
Nah, I'm pretty sure. But
Chinese?
I'll ask them again.
I'm sorry, I said Asian. I meant Chinese, Vietnamese, or Japanese, or... Taiwanese.
So
Filipino.
Yeah, so, so, like, I loved culture, and that's one of the reasons why I moved to New York, is because I wasn't getting enough in Texas. I was like, okay, Spanish, black, and white.
And Indian, pretty, and Indian.
Well, I told my parents before I turned 20, I was like, just be ready. I'm going to bring a non-American home.
I was trying to date a couple African American women, and I finally ended up with a Haitian. But only thing is, she was white.
White Haitian, yeah.
What? So the conversation between you and your dad about, or your dad and you about the cops.
But they let it come up. So like you see something on television, and sometimes I'll be like, please, that's fake.
Yeah.
And he'll be like, actually, let me educate you something. So he's like, we brought you up in the house to love everyone, and because we love Jesus, so here's the situation. We're loving, and we taught you to love everyone, but that doesn't mean it comes back in fold. Some people have experiences, and some people are taught, and that's the way he explained it. He first used experiences. Some people have experiences, and some people are taught. So every time I saw something like that, my first thought used to go to experiences. Like, what did they experience to make them so like that? That they would, like, did they have a bad altercation with the family or maybe their neighbors? It was like, oh gosh, cut your bushes, it's hanging over into our yard, and they just happen to be black. So that was always my first thought. But now that I'm older, I realize it's taught more than experienced.
Can I tell you experience? I can tell you these two stories. There was a lot of teaching through jokes in poor taste or others like that came from my side, but I had two experiences. I didn't have a lot of experiences with African American people. There was in second grade, my family migrated from Florida to Florida every year because my dad's a migratory beekeeper. And I went to this second grade school, and I remember in second grade, this little black girl came up to me, and she just had this like attitude. I was very timid back then.
Okay.
Very timid.
Okay.
And she not so much. And remember, like, I'm gonna show different families, different cultures, and whatever, and with bath times and clothing, and And I remember her coming up to me, and she just had. It was the first time I saw the
shrug,
the shoulder neck thing, and she just was like, "Hey, Kevin, you wore that shirt yesterday," and I was like, "Oh, that's embarrassing," And so I felt like I was like, it was like a hate crime. She hated the way I smelled, I think. And the second, so then my brother and I had to walk down this dirt road and stand in, we lived in this, and we went to Florida every year. We lived in this place, and there was this, like, African-American community, and we had to wait for the bus. So it'd be, like, two of us with, like, 10 to 12 other African-American kids, and we were, there's some kids our age, but some kids, like, high school. We were, like, middle school. And I remember getting on the bus one day, and I was in middle school, and this African American high schooler, I'm not sure what he was thinking, but he pulled out a knife.
What? Wait. He pulled out a knife.
He pulled out a knife, put the flat end to my neck. And was like saying something about just I don't know what he was thinking. I don't know what was going through his head. Maybe he just realized, like, I'm timid. My brother at the time was very much like we were both in middle school, so this could whatever.
But he's still a little bit more of a fighter.
A little more of a fighter, a little more protecting me for sure. He's protective, But I remember this kid did that, and I'm just goofing with him, and And it was like one of those things where it was like, for me personally, and I haven't had this conversation with my brother. I asked him when I get him on the podcast, but for me personally, it was just like this is kid's he's just dumb,
Yeah.
There in Florida, you got like there was some like educated people, and you had like of both races.
Oh yeah.
Some black people that were maybe a little poor, a little less educated, and then like the rednecks.
Right. Yeah.
And like I kept thinking like I've seen more rednecks do some stupid. I'm around more rednecks.
Right.
Because I'm white, so I've seen them do more stupid things. I've seen them do the same kind of stupid things. I don't know what it was, but I never really put that into my
race category.
My here's how race people treat me category. I noticed the difference.
Right.
Because I'm like, I don't know if I could actually do that. Like, it took me a long time to like practice that neck move. I was like, because my culture didn't do it. My mom wasn't like,
that. You didn't sway
you need
like
to get
that.
a bath, Kevin. So culturally, I was like, I was like, how did she like? That's cool. She learned that neck move. And then on the flip side, I just thought it was like just some high school kid doing something stupid, but bold, but very bold for a black boy in the South doing that to me. Very bold. Because if we had like, my brother was right there. He saw it. I don't think we told our parents about it because
it would have escalated.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it's funny you said that because you singled the individual out. You said he did that.
Yeah.
Which is equivalent. So, like, there are a lot of things, but these two important things are what has not changed since segregated times. Mm-hmm. And one, everybody's aware of now, police brutality. Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. So, but the other one, believe it or not, is actually the media outlet of the news. See, anytime a black person, and I'm going to use this word on purpose, made a mistake. So let's say he's guilty. African American is guilty of something. They grouped us together. It was like, and you magnify the race over the name. But anytime a white person does something, they magnify the name. And they stick with the name.
Do you think that's because white is normal? You don't need to say white. You say like Kevin Hackenberg, then you say or you say or
no, it's the
there was a crime committed by a black man. His name is was it kind of like the label of a black man versus a. You don't gotta say white guy because it's normal. The news is from them. The news is from the white people. So why do you gotta say the white person?
Right, but it's also like when it changes, it never changed. So there's the two things that haven't changed. But you gotta understand, both were also created during segregated times.
Yeah.
So it's not like it was created during freedom and then they started using it propaganda. They created it doing that. So it's like, so basically it's like this. Yeah, Martin Luther King is doing something good, but look at the rest of these guys. This is how they really are. So this is them, and this is him. You see what I'm saying? So he's singled out because he's educated, he's smart, and even white people want to listen to him. So this is Martin Luther King, and these are the black people. They look at the crimes, look what they're doing. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the grouping, and they do it with the Spanish culture too.
Yeah. Wait, segue and tell that story from the school. Where we were with the comedy short about
Oh my gosh!
I wish tragedy short, if you will.
So this really happened to a friend of mine. He's in the school. I forget the exact phrasing now. But he goes into school, and they're in a math class, and he asks the teacher, I'm going to say professor, because they were in the university, asks the professor a question. Professor answers the question, but the professor's like, good question. Walks out of the class. 2 white girls approach him. There's one short and one tall. The tall one says, wow, you're very eloquent in the way you asked that question. He was like, oh, thank you. He was like, but I really wanted to know because I was part of our homework, and I couldn't finish my homework because I didn't understand that formula. And she was like, "Oh my gosh, you must be related to like Malcolm X or Martin Luther King or she named all these great leaders." She was like, "No." It's like, "Well, you have to be because you're too intellectual." When she said that, the short white girl bends her head down and realizes where this is going. And he goes, "What do you mean?" She was like, "Well, it's only a few of you. It's only a percentage of you that gets the intelligent gene." And he was like, "Oh, okay." And right then he knew, like, there's no way to educate this person really fast. So he just like, and the short white girl just looks up and quietly mouths, "I'm sorry." And he's just like, "All right." And he just walks away.
It's interesting, the grouping. The grouping. My brother and I were talking today about, and this is a subject that comes up all the time. We're talking about crime and, black on black crime, and it's interesting that the percentages of black on black crime are like equal per population, I guess, or how I saw some stats recently, and white on white crime is like the same, is like a very similar, it's very similar, to the number of black, but no one talks about the white on white crime. You don't even say that. You don't even, that's not
right. That's not a thing. Well, here's the thing about. Okay, so this is where we get to systematic things.
Yeah.
And if this makes you uncomfortable, I'm sorry, but truth is truth, and the stats will prove it, and even the documented records politically will prove it. So the ghettos were created by the Nazis. It was an experiment, and it was proven that I'm gonna say animal, because it was proven whether you had ducks, chickens, fish, anything that is contained. If you put the more animals you put in the same amount of space, they start killing each other. Humans included. And it was practiced, and it was literally called the ghetto experiment by the Nazis. The Nazis created the ghettos. They were the first. And so that's what they did with a lot of the Jewish people. They was like, okay, you guys are smart enough. However, we're going to put you in this certain amount of living space, because eventually everybody knows not 10 families can live on one floor. You guys end up killing each other. And so that's what the ghettos and the suburbans were separated and segregated, and that's why the laws of loans of how can African Americans get along? You can't, because the idea is for you to end up in this apartment complex living with 10 other families, and you guys end up killing each other. And this is even proven with East LA. They try to do that with the Spanish culture over there. They were like, okay, they put a fence up. They didn't even police it. This was in the 60s. They didn't even police it. So it was just like, whatever happened over there just happened over there. So, of course, that experiment as proof, of course there's going to be black on black crime. That would happen with white people. That would happen with Jewish people. That would happen to anybody. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that type of mentality of grouping is bound to happen. You can't escape it. So how do you escape it? And this is where it goes into politics, because now you have to spread out the ghettos to be fair. And it's not about like give them more real estate and more space and more room. It's like, no, okay, make a 5-floor apartment with only 3 families living right there and build a lot of those. Not 55 floors, 45 floors, and 10 families living on one floor. Per floor. Small, you've seen New York apartments.
Yeah.
Okay, you see what I'm saying? So so in Midwest and the South, they use apartment complexes.
Yeah.
So over here, they obviously use apartment buildings. High rises and stuff like that. Okay, all right, a bunch of middle class people don't want to live here anymore.
When I was picking you up from the bus stop there, we were talking about we just kind of talking about different people, and we were talking about Ahmed, the gentleman from the jogger from South Carolina that got shot.
Right.
And you kind of ran a scenario for me.
Right.
Like a little litmus test. And,
right.
and by the way, you had educated me that there was some like footage.
Yeah, surveillance footage of a house that he obviously approached. All right, and they said there was some burglary in the neighborhood. That's okay. That's all good and dandy. Okay, if you put something in your pocket in a grocery store, and you put it back before you leave, it's not considered to be shoplifting. All right, if you leave empty-handed, if he goes in, it's still a violation.
Yeah.
If you approach a house, even if you go to the back, it's not a violation. It's when you leave with something or go in, it's a violation.
Yeah.
All right, so that has to be said. So surveillance footage shows that as he's leaving.
And you see this footage?
I didn't see this footage. I was told about this footage through a lot of friends. They was like, "Oh yeah, he approached this." I was like, "Okay, cool. Death sentence not necessary."
Yeah.
Who needs to get killed while being interrogated?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Nobody deserves death. I mean, so the scenario is: imagine this. So 3 people surrounded Ahmad and they killed him with cars. They didn't kill him with cars. They boxed him in with cars, and as he tried to escape, they killed him. All right, cool. Not cool, but that's what happened. So imagine there were 3 Hummers, and for every Hummer,
and a white dude approached the house.
And a white dude is jogging, approaches the house, and you know, my grandma lives there, but she's out of town. You know what I'm saying? There's been some burglaries. One guy, and remember, one guy had a rifle with him. All right, so, but in this scenario, there's 3 black guys driving Hummers. They box this guy in. One guy walks out with an AK-47. The other guy 2 with pistols, and they kill this guy. You see what I'm saying? Like, how would that look?
You're saying if it was 3 black guys
killing a white guy, for approaching a house. And even checking out the backyard, from what I was told, if
I'm checking, I've not heard that that part of it, but I'm not saying it's not true. I just haven't heard that part of it until now.
It was news to me this week too. So, so if that happened to a white guy, do you even think they wouldn't bring up the surveillance? It was like, no, he didn't even get arrested. It's not like they called the police. They dealt with it themselves. They acted as not even police brutality.
Yeah. How many weeks did it go before those guys were arrested? You know,
exactly. They acted as God above the system.
Yeah.
It was like, no, you deserve to die. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, there's no justice. There's no reason to even bring up the surveillance. Like, you killed him. You took matters into your own hand.
Yeah.
So in the same sense, my pastor, who I can honestly say that he, like, this devastated him, because he's like, every time a situation happens, he wants to learn more. Like, hey, what's going on? Tell me. I want to know. I don't want to be ignorant. You know,
he's white or black?
He's white. Yeah. He's Irish. His wife is Greek. That is hilarious. You got to see these 2 work together. It's so funny. So, but he's Irish. He's like, I want to know. Like, but he's Queen's Irish. He's not from Ireland. So no accent. And he was like, I want to know what's going on. Like, how do you help me? This Ahmad situation, he caught it. He was like, Philip, this taught me everything. He says, I imagine my son going out for a jog.
Getting curious.
I never had to have the conversation to say, like, hey, if something dangerous happened, run as fast as you can. Don't try to engage, especially if there's 2 or more. He was like, but this told me, like, I understand you guys' conversations now. He said, because he's a lawyer, I've had other lawyers say, yeah, but I still have to have the conversation with my kids. And he was like, this is his words, and his white mind was going like, you don't really understand the days and times, and we're not in some crazy hillbilly, in your words, redneck town. So it's like, you're in New York, you're okay, you know. Yeah. And now he's realizing, like, oh, no, this doesn't matter. You know, so it awakened him, and he was like, Philip, I'm so sorry. I just want to say I'm sorry. And he's apologized for many things. I'm not joking. He apologized for slavery. It's like, well, you didn't do it, and I never endured it. He was like, so, you know, but at the same time, I appreciate the
empathy.
To go like, look, I know it was my culture that did this, and I just want to stand to say, like, I don't partner with this thought. I don't partner with the dehumanizing of another race just because I don't understand their culture or because I can take advantage of it.
Yeah. What there's a lot of, again, I'm not sure if you are familiar with this. I get sent them a lot from some of my conservative family or friends, like some of the African Americans that would say that bringing up these things. Yes, no one's going to say that racism is gone.
Right.
I don't think anyone's going to say that
it's in the Bible.
There's no such thing as racism.
Right.
Anymore. But the people that would say, like, there's no need for change other than maybe a little bit of reform, or there's no need for these protests, there's no need for all this drama. And the drama, the protesting leads to riots, leads to looting.
Okay, I'll put it to you this way. I like what I say our because I'm in PA, but I'm in New York City is where I live. The commissioner said something really well, and I applaud him on this. I'm not saying I agree with all of his policies, but I do agree with him on this. And he said, look, we have strategically, and this is his words, strategically watched, and we noticed there is a difference between the protesters and the rioters and looters. And he says, so just know that we're not after the peaceful ones. We're after the people who are throwing bottles. We're after the people who are breaking windows. So if you're peaceful, you have no worries. You're safe. Just voice your opinion. It's your right, But there's somebody there who doesn't have the same heart as you if you come to voice your opinion only. But if you come there to destroy, those are the people. So, end quote. That's him speaking.
Yeah.
And now I was proud of that because in every protest, they've always like, they, another grouping, they did this. Well, they were protesting and then they looted. But now
different days.
Different days, right? So, but now he's very distinct to say like, no, there is peaceful protesters, and those people are great. And then there's some people who have a different agenda, and that's why we have police on the street. It's not because of the peaceful, but the same way, why do we create laws? If we all love each other equally, right? We just love each other equally. But no, why are laws created? For the 10% who don't want to abide by the law. Mm. That's just what it is. Yeah. What is the number? 1 out of 10, 1 out of 12, right?
Yeah.
It's always the 1 out of.
Yeah.
It's not that the 12 out of 14 said.
Yeah.
No, you only hear that on dentist commercials.
It was interesting. George Floyd passed away, died, was murdered, however it comes to be known officially. And then there was stuff was happening in Minneapolis, and it was a Saturday. My wife and I are having breakfast or lunch in the backyard, and she pulls up her phone and shows me this wonderful picture of a bunch of people like kneeling near City Hall here in Philadelphia, and wearing masks and holding up their things. They're all 6 feet apart. It was like really. It was poetically beautiful.
Yeah.
Like it was what I found fascinating. If you were like City Hall in Philadelphia, you can walk through it, and you do walk through it to get from down Market Street, and you walk through this Dilworth Plaza, and you would have had to like walk through or past the protesters in between them 6 feet to kind of get. So it was really a beautiful, and they're all just like there in solidarity, taking a knee. Which was very, the knee to me was very impactful because it's like, almost like Jesus taking a knee and humbling himself.
Was it Kaepernick?
Kaepernick. That brought that up before he came back in the news.
Right.
Officially. Like I was like, wow, that's bold because like we were, we were talking about no knees 3 years ago, But in here, all these people, and also seeing cops like join them and say like, we're not for this. I'm not for this.
Right, that's good.
And I was like, this is wonderful. It's so beautiful to see this peaceful protest. And then like 3 hours later, Meg's like, oh yeah, they're burning a cop car. I'm like, the same people.
Right. And that is always, like I said, there's always that 10%, which is the one out of how many.
Yeah.
And so you have, and the fact that our commissioner in New York City distinct it, and I try to watch Minnesota, I try to watch Boston, I try to watch Dallas, I try to watch California, because I do the CBS News so I can bounce around and see what's happening, you know. And it's important. So you can see the difference. And
what is the cure here? Is there a cure?
Well,
what's the cure?
I'm Christian. I know the cure. But the difference is I
the band, the cure.
Right. I love what Solomon said when he says, you know, the more you know, the more patience is required. Okay, as a father, when you're teaching your kids, it's not a fast answer. You have to repeat yourself, you have to repeat yourself, you have to repeat yourself, you have to repeat yourself. Then it gets to a different age. Now you repeat something different, but the same. You have to repeat yourself, you have to repeat yourself, you have to repeat yourself. So it's like this ongoing battle. And then when they become teenagers, it's like, I know, Dad, I know. Dad, leave me alone, I know, right? Everybody knows everything. It's like, you're 14, you don't know anything. But you're 15, get out of here. Just because you're a graduate, you still know nothing. You know what I'm saying? So it's this mindset of you have to keep teaching, even though they say they know. So the problem is, bottom line is this: identity. How does this individual threaten you? How does this individual make you feel that they're going to take away your ideal of what life should be? How does this, and how does that impact you? So you're one. What's the threat? There is no need to put a knee on his neck. What is the threat? Okay? Number two, what is the abuse? It's out there. We know it. The numbers have even shown it. Now that we went into COVID, there's been a lot more abuse. A lot more. Something that they didn't expect, and it's gross. And I won't say any numbers, but it's gross. You know? On the national scale.
When you say abuse of, like...
domestic abuse, family abuse, incest.
Yeah.
Just gross stuff.
Yeah.
You know, just gross stuff. On the national scale I'm referring to.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh man, this... But, guess what? This COVID thing and this George Floyd thing made you look in the mirror. So, because it's identity. That's what it's all about. Look, if you know you're a king, if you know you're a prince, you handle things way different.
It's interesting. You know, we were talking about this conversation about the protests in Michigan, I believe it was, about, and all over the U.S. about, you know, don't hold me back from my job, or don't force me.
The COVID protest.
Make me wear a mask. And that's about identity too. That's about identity too. Like, I identify with my work. I identify with my freedoms. I
identify with my socializing.
Yeah, my beer, my bar.
The bar that I go to every day after work or before work.
Yeah, and I think that, and then we come to this other phase where I identify myself as a law-abiding citizen. I identify myself as like someone who's protecting the neighborhood. You know, don't take that away from me just because I want to attack this guy who's jogging, and I identify myself as a black man, you know, or as a white man, or other, you know, or as the Hernandez,
right?
Whatever their nationality may be. Identity is something that's like we are so passionate about.
Well, see,
but do we identify ourselves as wise, humble, and patient?
That's what I disagree with. I don't think America identifies as they identify their worth by ability. So you ask somebody, who are you? First thing that comes across their mind is, what do I do? I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor. They don't think about their name. America identifies themselves by ability. It's a power thing. And it's not power over all the time. That happens. Abuse happens. 1 out of 10. 1 out of 20. There's always that 10%. it's the mindset of your identity is actually based in your ability. I can act, I can sing, I can drum. So there's a greater chance I could be successful. You see what I'm saying?
Success.
So it's the identity is based on what can I do, not who I am.
It's interesting. In the last podcast we did, you were talking about, for you, Jesus represents success.
Mm-hmm.
As a marketer, you mentioned a very cool perspective there. But if we identify, I always find that pride comes in, and that act of wanting to act like God and make decisions comes in, and that success, that the desire to be God, to say, I know the right thing to do in this environment. I know the right way to vote in this environment. I know the right way to make change happen. You know.
Well, here's the thing. That's another level. That's around the world. The idea of being perfect, and that's a problem. What is perfect? Perfect is being so peaceful that I don't have to raise my voice, and I can just use authority to tell you the truth. No, it doesn't work like that. Not everybody agrees with what your truth is. All right, so what is perfect? Perfect is, I married a lady who's from India, and they have different culture than my African American mindset. And when I go to their weddings, I adapt, because I'm in their wedding. When in Rome. Over here, I have to say, hey, don't expect this, because America's not like that. You know?
It's, again,
so
the challenge, what we just said there, I think that is that some people don't want to adapt. The people that own the culture for so long don't want to adapt.
And that's the mindset. I'll give you even a crazier example. When I first moved to Brooklyn, I met 3 older guys, and I say older because they were way older than me, and they had never left Brooklyn. They'd never been outside of another borough. They'd never been to Manhattan, Staten Island. They'd never been to Queens. They'd never been to Manhattan. It's right there. You could see it from the streets.
Yeah.
They never left. And I said, and they was like, hey, man, where you going? You going back to your job? My job was in Brooklyn. I lived in Brooklyn. I was like, no, I'm going to Queens. I'm going to meet a friend. And they were going to grab their sons for protection because they never left. And I was like, do you know where you're getting to? I was like, yeah, my friend's house. I was like, you sure, man? And I was like, yeah. So they're living off of the stories of others because they never encountered it. It's not from their personal experience because they never left Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And when they told me, my brain was shocked. I was like,
it's a fear. It's a fear thing. There's fear. God uses fear. God uses fear to, or not God, but fear can control us to stay where we are or to go do something stupid and rash.
Right.
You know?
You hear this, like, you know, you hear the stories of people who've been through trauma, right? And so when something happens, and it's a real condition, you know, when you're dealing with real trauma, and I use something physical like war.
Yeah.
Something that everybody can understand, like, okay, when you see explosions and it's your friend that you see parts fly,
yeah,
it's traumatic because you were with this guy for a whole year building a unit, and now there's no way, and there's no time to gather his remains and go like, okay, let's go have a memorial. We just gotta have him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So these things are really traumatizing. So when they hear loud sound or flashes, you know, it triggers something. So in the same case, like, fear is just as dramatic when it's like when you encounter a cop and you're handcuffed for no apparent reason, put in the back of a squad car, they never tell you why, and then they let you go. And then you found out through your friend that he only asked me, did I have anybody to drive this? And it's like, oh, that's why he let me go, because you were stuck on the side of the road. So you know, oh, shoot, if I didn't have this kid, to be specific, if I didn't have this white kid with me, where would I be? Where would I be? So PTS wars, but in emotional trauma is just as painful and powerful. When the person who's supposed to be protecting you and you feel threatened by, and you don't know why, and they won't answer you. Hey, could you just tell me why you pulled me over? No answer. And then they don't say a word. They just grab your hands and they put them up against the truck and they start patting you down. Put your hands behind your back and handcuff you. Don't say a word. You don't know where this night is going to end. That is just as traumatizing.
Yeah.
Because so when somebody breaks into your house, your first thought is not call the cops. Your first thought is, I got to handle this myself.
Yeah.
Because the minute they walk through, and if it's a white guy breaking through their window in my apartment,
yeah.
I'm shot.
Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
So, that's why identity is important, because identity will help you face your fears and go like, okay, I know I'm afraid of this, and this is what I need to work on. But if you don't look at yourself and you just think, I'm me, that's it, and I don't need to work on me, then you have no identity.
Yeah.
You're a face and a name, and you're probably built on what you do, not who you are.
Yeah. Let me wrap up and just say, Philip, it was good having you here a second time.
I really enjoyed it.
So there's we have not even scratched the surface.
It's too much, but you know what?
Yeah. Let's do it again.
Yeah, it's not over.
Not today. Thanks. This is Christians Who Drink Whiskey and Their Open-Minded Friends, Kevin Hackenberg and Philip Scott. Round 2. Boom. Cheers.
Cheers.
So the question is, what drew or draws you to church every Sunday? And do you go to church every Sunday, or do you skip? You haven't been going lately because it's been quarantine. But that's coming to an end. So let's talk about going to church, what draws you, and then where do you go after you die? What happens after you die? Those exclusively on patreon.com/funny&amen.